Sometimes the best way to understand history isn't through a textbook. It's by seeing it through the eyes of someone who actually lived it. Today, we're going to do just that. We're looking at the incredible sweep of the 20th century through the life and the words of one woman, Emily Carringer. Let's dive into her journey.
I mean, this one quote really says it all, doesn't it? Just let that sink in for a second. It perfectly captures the staggering amount of change she witnessed. From the sound of horses on cobblestone streets to the roar of a rocket heading for the moon, she saw the world completely reinvent itself. That one sentence? That's our roadmap.
So, where does a story like this even begin? Well, it starts in Chicago, right at the turn of the century. A city, and really a whole world, that was standing on the edge of something brand new.
And that world was caught right between two eras. On the one hand, you have the Chicago Emily was born into, a 19th century city still rebuilding from its Great Fire with very traditional roles and expectations. But at the exact same time, the world on the right was bursting onto the scene. The very first automobiles were starting to appear, and there was this incredible sense of optimism and innovation in the air.
And this split, this kind of duality, it played out in her own childhood. She was encouraged to read and write, sure, but the ultimate goal of her education was pretty clear: prepare her to manage a home. It was a world where women were still fighting for the right to vote, a right she herself wouldn't get until she was 21 years old.
Then, when she was just 12 years old, her entire world gets turned upside down. The family decides to pack up and leave the cold, industrial Midwest for the sunny promise of California. But, as you'll see, this dream of a new start was about to run into a really tough reality.
The move itself was a huge adventure. Prompted by letters from an uncle talking about sunny San Diego, they boarded a train and crossed the country. Can you imagine seeing America unfold outside your window like that? They arrived not in the huge city we know today, but in a small, optimistic coastal town of only about 40,000 people, just buzzing with energy.
So they're settling in, getting used to the sunshine after all those harsh Chicago winters, but that dream of a new beginning, just a few years old, was about to be completely shattered. And hearing it in her own words, it just hits you. The suddenness, the shock of it all. At just 16, the foundation of her world was ripped away, and the life she thought she was going to have changed in an instant.
Just like that, any thought of finishing high school was gone. To help support her mom, Emily had to drop out and get a job. She started working at Marston's, which was a big, fancy department store downtown. It was a tough decision, made out of pure necessity, but as it turns out, that job would completely change the course of her life.
So while the entire world is descending into the chaos of the Great War, Emily's life takes another huge turn. This time, toward building a family of her own and finding some stability in a very unstable world.
Talk about a wartime romance, right? She meets Auble Carringer at work right around the time the U.S. enters World War I. They got married while he was in the Marine Corps Reserves, not knowing if he was going to be shipped overseas. She said their ceremony was quiet and simple, and then, amazingly, just a few months after their wedding, the war ended.
I just love details like this. $21.10 a month. It makes it so real, doesn't it? That number represents the start of their future, the foundation for the life they were building together, in a home they built with their own hands.
And they weren't building that life alone. Her mother, Georgiana, moved in with them, which was super common back then. This idea of a family compound, where multiple generations lived under one roof, was this incredible built-in support system. It meant they could pool their money and get essential help raising their daughter, Betty.
So now we're going to see how something as simple as a garden became this incredible source of strength and resilience during two of the toughest times in American history, the Great Depression and World War II.
So when the Great Depression hit and so many families lost absolutely everything, the Carringers had a couple of things going for them. First, Lyle was incredibly lucky to keep his job, so they had a steady, if modest, income. And second, their love of gardening turned into a literal lifeline. It wasn't just about feeding themselves, it was about sharing with neighbors who were really struggling. And through all of this turmoil, you see this incredible story of progress playing out through her daughter, Betty. Betty got to do what Emily couldn't. She finished high school, then went to college, and then became a teacher. Think about that difference. In just one generation, the world of possibilities for women had completely exploded compared to what Emily had known as a girl. Okay, so as we move into the later chapters of her life, you really start to grasp the insane amount of change she witnessed, not just out in the wider world, but right in her own backyard.
Just look at this. The small town she moved to, 40,000 people,
ballooned into a major city of over 1 million during her lifetime. That's not just growth. That's a complete transformation of the world right outside her front door. It really mirrors the explosive change that was happening all across America. So after all the turmoil, the wars, the depression, Emily really dedicated herself to the things that brought beauty and joy into her life. Family, of course, was always at the center, but she also poured her heart into gardening, her community, and even became a master flower-arranging judge, studying the Japanese art of ikebana. This was all about creating connection and finding peace. And this, right here, is really what it's all about. This was her final wish, something she wrote for her grandsons. It's such a simple, powerful request. Remember the story. It's a reminder that history isn't just about big events. It's about the everyday people who lived through it all.
Emily's journey from a world of horse-drawn carriages to the age of space travel is just an incredible testament to a life lived through extraordinary times. And it really makes you think, doesn't it? Every family has these stories of change, of resilience, of love. So, the question I'll leave you with is, what's yours?